Welcome to another show of For Those Who Served. Today I have a very unique guest, and that's Judy Wade, who is a Watertown girl and has served in the military. Judy, welcome.
Thank you.
Tell us about your background and how you got into the service.
Well, I did grow up in Watertown, and I had a career before I went into the service. I graduated from Northwestern Prep here in Watertown, and then went to Dr. Martin Luther College in New Ulm, Minnesota. And I went back there to teach and coach for 7 years. And then I decided that it was time, it was now or never, because of my age, to fulfill one of my other dreams that I had had early on, and that was to join the military. So I did enlist in the Marine Corps at that time.
Okay. Where did you enlist in the Marine Corps?
I actually was processed at the MEP station in Milwaukee.
Okay. And from there, where were you shipped?
All of the female recruits in the Marine Corps go to Parris Island, South Carolina for training, and they still do.
Okay. And what were you trained in then? What was your field?
I ended up being the honor graduate out of the boot camp, so I got to pick my MOS, Military Occupational Specialty. And I went with electronics. Apparently my ASVAB scores, which are the tests you take when you come in the military, indicated I had an aptitude for that. Well, how would I know that? I had never done any electrical work or anything, but apparently I was trainable in the field of electronics. So they sent me to 29 Palms, California, which is in the Mojave Desert, just north of Palm Springs.
Okay.
And I was out there for 2 years going through a very lengthy electronics school to become a tactical air operations control repairer, which is a big green van with these consoles that air traffic or air controllers in the battlefield, not air traffic control, would sit and monitor and speak to the pilots, the military pilots, and send them on their missions. Well, I repaired that equipment. So
did you find it was hard to do?
No, I actually really enjoyed it.
Okay. Okay.
You know, it was very technical. We had to learn a lot of electronics, a lot of different theory. And then we got to apply it. We fixed everything from power supplies to the predecessor to a computer.
Okay.
It was like a hard drive with little drum heads on it, and we had to fix even inside the hard drive, essentially. It was fun.
Was the other male gender in that same area with you?
Yes, there were very few women in that field at that time.
And how did they accept the women?
Well, I think it depended upon the person, the woman. I approached it by always maintaining a professional relationship with all of those men that I worked with. In other words, my first name was my rank.
Okay.
So I was Corporal Wade, Sergeant Wade, Staff Sergeant Wade.
Okay.
It was never Judy.
Okay.
So, and I treated them the same way. I always addressed them that way, and it was noticeable. But that helped in the workplace. Everybody understood where everybody was at, and I tried to do the best job I could at anything I was assigned, including the jobs nobody wanted.
Okay.
And that's how you can, you know,
that would
you never
be a plus.
you never make a judgment on what they're assigning you to do. You just do the best you can.
Yeah, so that's a plus then in that respect. No wonder you went as far as you did.
Well, you have to put up with some less than desirable assignments from time to time, but you know, just get it over with, do the best you can, and then they'll assign you something else.
So from there, where did you go then?
Well, my first duty station was Hawaii.
Oh, wow. No wonder your mom and dad went there.
Being a girl from Wisconsin, that was a really neat assignment. I was at Kaneohe Bay, which is on the other side of Oahu, from Pearl Harbor and from Honolulu. So it was kind of quiet on that side, beautiful. I never tired of the beautiful scenery there. It was just unbelievable.
And the weather.
Oh, perfect.
Right.
Yeah, their rainy season is just a few rainstorms in December, and that's about it.
That's about it.
Not bad.
And then where did you go after you had fulfilled that assignment?
I actually ended up going back to the school for a technician level training. And
Is that a higher step?
yes. So they want you to get a little experience,
Mm-hmm.
and in that case it was 3 years at Hawaii. And then I came back to 29 Palms for my technician level training.
Mm-hmm.
And I did a little time as an instructor there,
Okay.
waiting for my school to
And
start.
that would be your field because you were a teacher
It
before.
kind of combined my knowledge in electronics with the ability to teach.
Mm-hmm.
And that worked out real well for me.
Mm-hmm.
I was instructor of the quarter, even though I was only there for a few months doing it,
Okay.
because I could teach.
Uh-huh.
And from there, when I graduated from that school, I got assigned to Okinawa, Japan.
And what transpired there?
Well, that was fun. New culture,
Mm-hmm.
really enjoyed travel. It was exciting to me.
Uh-huh.
While I was there, I got a couple of extra tours, one to Korea and one to Philippines.
Okay.
And the Korea was just a big exercise that we all participated in,
Okay.
joint forces. And then the Philippines was actually a special assignment that I was handpicked for. We were guarding our site down there. We had a radar site down in the Philippines. And at the time, the communists were very active, and they had killed a few American technical representatives
Oh,
and so
dear.
on. So they handpicked people that could go down there and guard that site, and I was one of them with 3 other guys, just the
Okay.
4 of us.
Okay.
And we had to go out in town and get our Filipino driver's licenses, and we had to drive away from Subic, which was the big base, out to a little base.
Mm-hmm.
And again, very beautiful, unique
Mhm.
part of the world.
Mhm.
And I really enjoyed that as well. That was a great experience for me.
Are their cars littler than ours? And you said you had to learn how to drive those cars.
Well, you had to get a driver's license
Yeah,
to
okay.
drive there. We got a van that we drew from the
Okay.
motor pool from the Navy there at Subic, and we used that to drive. What's unusual about driving in the Philippines, though, is they have water buffalo that they use as farm animals.
Oh.
And you will often see water buffalo up on the road.
Uh-huh.
There's no lights or signs or lines in the road, and often the farmers will be drying their rice up on the road.
Oh, my goodness.
So you had to really watch out,
Uh-huh.
and driving at night was almost impossible, so we tried to do all our driving during the day. But it was, there were threats to American installations down there, so we were the Marines guarding this area, and just the 4 of us.
Okay.
Really not
Okay.
very senior people, but we took that responsibility on, and it
Okay.
was really fun. I enjoyed those guys, and I think we did a good job. So.
Well, you must have, because then you went on to Korea, huh?
Well, the Korea happened right before that. So when I
Okay.
got back from Korea, they told me, you're getting the special assignment to
Okay.
the Philippines. So
Okay. What did you do in Korea?
it was just my job. We were there on an exercise, and it was winter. So we were out on the beach. The rice paddies weren't being worked anymore, but they were right behind us. So there was these dunes. Our equipment was up on the dunes, and then you could see the water.
Uh-huh.
And behind us were these frozen rice paddies. And this was a camp.
Okay.
So we had to shower in tents, and, it was kind of, rustic. We were doing, outhouses, basically.
It's like
I won't use the slang that we use in the Marine Corps. It's probably not appropriate for TV, but essentially that's what it was. You're
Okay.
camping in the winter. It snowed. I mean, it was cold.
How'd you keep warm?
Well, we had these, in the tents, they had these little portable oil heater things. And we'd buy these brass bowls out in town in Korea, and we'd put water in there that we draw from this water buffalo. Basically,
Okay.
it's a big tank, and
Uh-huh.
and we'd heat that up, and we could have some hot water to spruce up a little bit in the tent area.
Okay.
So
How did the Koreans adjust to seeing the Americans over there?
well, they were part of the exercise.
Okay.
So the South Korean troops were around. They weren't always used to seeing women in the military, though.
Oh, I'm
so
sure not.
there were some interesting times. We just pretty much tried to ignore,
Mm-hmm.
you know, they were not confrontational at all. So.
Okay. What type of food did you have over there then?
Well, you're never quite sure what you're eating when you're out in town.
Really?
Yeah, they have different animals and things that they eat that we would not.
Okay.
You know, so that was always something you wanted to make sure you had beef or chicken.
Okay. Did the service supply you with?
Yes, we
like-
had MREs, and
Okay.
we did have some hot chow that they
Okay.
brought in to us out at our camp.
Mm-hmm.
So we had a variety of things.
Okay.
Meals ready to eat are those dehydrated things that you just reconstitute and
Yeah.
eat, and they,
Okay.
you know, after a few
Okay.
months of that, you're pretty well stopped up
Yeah.
because it's really full of preservatives and so on. It's very
Yeah.
not really healthy for you.
No.
A lot of calories, and that's the way they're designed. So.
Yeah. Okay. So what happened after that episode? Then you said you went back to the Philippines.
Yes, and then my tour was up when I came back from the Philippines a few months later, and I came back to the U.S. and was assigned to Virginia Beach, Virginia, on something called inspector-instructor duty, where we would be the active duty working with a reserve unit.
Okay. I'll bet that was interesting.
It was. We had a number of really interesting assignments and deployments while we were there. Probably the most interesting was, at that time, Desert Shield and Desert Storm were going on. So we were kind of left back, you know, the
Okay.
reserve units. And we covered down on some of the things that the active duty Marine units were doing a lot of the times when we weren't involved in some sort of operation. We did a lot of drug operations with
Really?
DEA and a lot of the government. So I did some drug operations on the Mexican border, and then the biggest one was in Colombia.
Okay.
We were in the middle of nowhere out in Colombia looking for where the cartel was manufacturing the drugs
And they
then
were
flying them
illegal?
out. Oh yeah, it was cocaine and
Yeah,
at the
okay.
time. And they were flying it out from these remote jungle areas. They'd have these manufacturing plants, and they would be having little dirt runways out there, and we were tracking their aircraft,
Okay.
trying to figure out where these locations were by watching all the air traffic movement, and then passing that information on to the Colombian military and government.
Okay.
Of course, because of their political environment, they didn't necessarily act on the information we were giving them. Little did they know we were data linking that information to Panama and to the U.S. forces. So as soon as those little drug planes broke Colombian airspace and were out over the Gulf of Mexico, we had them.
Okay.
So they
And-
weren't necessarily getting the drugs into the United States, but we were trying to help put, you know, some of those operations out of business.
Well, that was a plus also.
Yes, it was. I was the only female out there, by the way, on that operation. It was kind of an interesting
You learned
camp.
a lot.
There were no roads in there. It was the darkest place I've ever been. There
Really?
was no light at night. We had to use light discipline red flashlights, and it was beautiful though.
Yeah.
I mean, here you are, you know, in the Amazon River basin, and there's no lights of any kind for miles and miles, and you can see every star there is. It was just beautiful.
I'll bet. What else can you tell us about your service years?
Well, let's see. I did do quite a bit of work with the reserves after that.
Okay.
I enjoyed that. There is a lot of work involved with it because they are only there usually on 1 weekend a month and then 2 weeks in the summer. But then again, as we have seen in recent years, they get activated every once in a while, and they have to be ready to go perform the mission of a full military unit. So our job was to keep them ready.
Okay. Were they ever deployed then?
Oh, absolutely. Some of them did deploy. I wasn't always with those units at that time.
I see.
I did another INI down just south of here in North Chicago at Fort Sheridan at the time. Now the unit is relocated to Great Lakes Naval
Okay.
Base. But that was also a big opportunity for me. In the meantime, from Virginia Beach, I should mention that I actually went down and served as a drill instructor at Parris Island for a little while. And while I was down there, I got selected for warrant officer.
Okay.
So I moved over to the officer ranks
Uh-huh.
halfway through my career.
Okay.
And
And you were in the reserves how long?
I wasn't in the reserves. I was active
At-
duty the
active
whole
duty.
time.
Okay.
But I was in support of the reserve
Reserves.
units.
Okay.
And I did that tour as an officer in Chicago.
Mm-hmm.
And right prior to that, my first assignment as an officer was back to Okinawa.
Mm-hmm.
This time as a radar officer. And so I had a crew of Marines working for me as we repaired radars and supported different exercises and deployments
Mm-hmm.
from over there. So it was different as an officer. I wasn't the one fixing the equipment anymore or working on the gear. I was in charge of managing all of the equipment and the Marines that
Okay.
kept that going so that we
Uh-huh.
would have the opportunity to perform our mission.
Did you get to see Pearl Harbor when you were over in Hawaii?
I did. As a matter of fact, I loved Hawaii. Like I said, my first re-enlistment was over there. I had to make a decision as to whether I would stay. And one day of the month, they would let you re-enlist. They'd shut Pearl Harbor or the Arizona Memorial down.
Mm-hmm.
And they would only shuttle military out there to do re-enlistments.
I
And
see.
so I got to go over there and re-enlist for the first time on the Arizona Memorial.
Mm-hmm.
And I got to call colors and raise the flag over the Arizona Memorial, and I still have that flag.
When you say call colors, what do you mean by that?
Well,
What is
attention
that?
to colors, and
Oh,
you raise the
okay.
flag, and everybody stands at attention and salutes and gives respect to the flag as being raised and lowered.
Mm-hmm.
And we still do that in all of our communities in one way or another. When there's a ball game, people take their hats off, put their hand over their heart, and if you were former military, you probably stand at attention.
Okay.
So that's what I mean by call for colors.
Okay.
I actually physically did raise the flag myself over the Arizona
What
Memorial.
a thrill.
Yes, it was.
What a thrill.
And I still have that flag.
Good for you.
Yeah.
What were your feelings when you saw Pearl Harbor?
It's unbelievable. If you take the tour over there, you see actual battle footage. And at the time I was over there, it was in the 80s, and there were still survivors of Pearl Harbor that would greet, and even some of the Japanese would sometimes be there that had fought in that battle. Very interesting to meet and talk with those guys as far as what happened and the chaos that ensued.
Uh-huh.
And then to see all those sites, and it's a wonderful memorial. Everybody should see that once in their life. It really is a worthwhile tour.
And you can only get there by boat from land, right?
Yes, on the
They
shoreline.
didn't build a walkway or anything.
No. There's a shuttle, that Navy shuttle that runs people out there.
Okay.
And you can be on there for a little while, and then they take another group out, and take them back and bring another one out. But while they're waiting, they have this little museum area there.
Okay.
And that's where you can get the information and watch the battle footage and understand what happened there.
Okay. And seeing that, we only learned about it in our history classes in school, but the actual seeing of what that is
Yes.
has to really hit home.
Yes, and since that time, the only thing that comes equivalent to that is 9/11
Okay.
and the attacks
Yeah,
on New York.
Right. Did you ever have anything to do with 9/11?
Well, that was close to the end of my active duty career.
Okay.
And I was at Reserve Headquarters at that time down in New Orleans. So that was my final duty station.
Okay.
What a wonderful place to have as a duty station.
Okay.
But there's a Navy and Marine Corps headquarters down there.
Uh-huh.
And my job was to get all those reserve units ready to go.
Okay.
And especially with regard to the equipment, all the COM-elec type of equipment. So we had 181 Marine Corps Reserve units
Oh, wow.
at that time. So I had oversight with my crew there of how their readiness of their equipment and their personnel. And we weren't easy on them. So
Oh, that's okay.
I'm glad we weren't, because what happened at 9/11 resulted in us having to get them ready very quickly. So in the end, you know, just being prepared and doing the right things was what they needed. There was no time to be lax, even though we have no, you know, idea what's coming. In this case, they were ready to go.
Okay. Now, you retired from the active duty. Now, I know that you had a beautiful sending away party in Washington, D.C.
Right. That was just this year in June. I retired from active duty in the Marine Corps in 2003.
Okay.
And the war was just starting. I had already dropped my papers to retire, and I did stay on longer. I volunteered to stay on longer, but I was working on my doctorate degree at the time that I had committed to that. So I had some schooling and things that I needed to do in that next year. And after being out for a year, and my schooling, my classes being done, I wanted to do something. Again, I kind of missed it, and I understood the culture of the Marine Corps. So a job came up in Quantico, Virginia.
Okay.
It was a new position, and it was something that I had always really been hard on them for. The organization that provides all the new equipment to the Marines, Marine Corps Systems Command. I actually got a job with them and relocated up there. And that's where I served then as a civil servant with the Marine Corps for another 11 years. And I just retired in June. And yes, they did have a big retirement ceremony for me again. So that was my second one.
Well, tell us about that ceremony, because I understand it was quite the thing.
Well, I wanted it to be a little more relaxed than my active duty retirement. I actually had a formal parade and everything when I retired from active duty in New Orleans.
Oh my goodness.
And the Marines were standing at attention with rifles, and they did pass and review, and my parents got escorted out there, and I didn't want something quite that, you know, pomp and circumstance. I didn't need that. I wanted it to be kind of fun, and so what I did was I had by name invitations to a lot of folks I'd worked with. Some of them were folks I had served with on active duty that were in that area. And I hosted a party, basically, after the ceremony where I provided the open bar and the food, the hors d'oeuvres, and it was well attended, needless to say. It was that or be at work.
Right. Did you ever get to meet a president when you were in the Marine Corps?
Actually, no, I didn't. They would often give you a, you know, recognition upon your retirements for all those years of service. You would get letters and so on from them. I did meet a number of general officers in the Marine Corps, commandants of the Marine Corps, and former commandants.
Who was the general when you were in?
Which time?
I mean, we had more than one, huh? Okay. Well, the last one, whatever.
Well, we were just changing it out, and the general that I worked for was General Schrader at Marine Corps Systems Command. And great fellow, came from the artillery field. So he's a Marines Marine, you know, and treated us well. And you know, all of us that are civilians, we serve just like we're still on active duty. We're there, and we work the long hours, and the idea of that organization is to provide the Marines with the best equipment and most advanced technologies that we could, and make sure they're well trained so they're safe with it. And that was partly what my responsibility was there.
Now, you said you were working on your doctorate degree.
Yes.
You started out with educational degree?
Yes.
Tell
and
us
I finished with an education degree.
All right.
In the middle, when I was a sergeant and stationed at Virginia Beach, I got a master's in public administration.
Okay.
And so then the follow-on to that was I got an interest, an itch to go back to school, and I got my doctorate in education.
Okay.
And it was in the field of instructional technology, which played in very nicely to my civilian job that I took. So it was kind of a marriage of all of my experiences all along, and culminating in my civilian career in Quantico.
Well, I think people should be looking up to you for what you've accomplished
there's a
the
lot.
service and in your life.
Well, thank you so much. Actually, it went by quickly, and it was a lot of fun, honestly.
Right. Before closing, what would you, if anyone wanted to join the service and come to you and say, I'd like to join the service, I understand you were in service and did so much, what would you give them as an information?
Well, for me, it was a wonderful experience. You have to be willing to work hard. You have to be willing to work hard, especially in this day and age. If people don't know what they want to go into, young people, what a great way to get exposed to other cultures, all these technologies. I used to say a lot of the equipment was the biggest boy toy that some of these kids would ever play with, you know, because it was real stuff. And the weapons are impressive, too. I mean, I got to shoot AT-4 rocket launchers and things like that.
Yeah.
I know no other girl in my high school class did that. So, but as far as advice, go for it. I mean, it is a good experience. Just do one tour. You get all the veterans benefits, especially if you don't know what you want to go into. Get some life experience. Get something to put on your resume.
Okay.
To go along with schooling that you could follow with later. And oh, by the way, there's the GI Bill to help pay for it.
That's, yeah,
I mean, those are definite benefits that our government gives to the military.
Well, I'm sure the benefits are great, but look at the price people have paid.
It is physically taxing. You have to be willing to train and be fit. And I think, you know, it does take a lot of day-to-day getting up early and
What were your time days? What time did you get up and what time could you check back in?
Well, it depended. For example, my first assignment in Hawaii, I was on a crew that started at 5 in the morning and got off at 2 in the afternoon, 1400.
Okay.
And when we were done there, we'd go out to the golf course and play 18 holes.
Well,
because they had a nice golf course on that base.
Yes, they do. You're right.
So, you know, there's some recreational things that you get to participate in. There's a lot of camaraderie.
Yeah, okay.
And then other places, you had more business hours.
Yeah, okay. Well, Judy, this has been an interesting interview, and we can't thank you enough for your service and for what you've done for our country.
Well, thank you.
Thank you.
I appreciate it, and I would like to say thank you to all the veterans and their families in the Watertown community.